I cheated on my wife and got my coworker pregnant. I told my wife the truth myself. She kicked me out that same night. I don't blame her for that. I moved into my coworker's apartment because I didn't really have another option. Our marriage wasn't good after our son was born. I'm not saying that as an excuse. I know what I did, but things changed. She was exhausted all the time. I was working full time and then coming home to tension. We barely touched each other. Conversations were about nappies, money, and sleep schedules. Every time I tried to talk about us, it turned into a fight about how she was doing everything alone. I started staying later at work because it felt calmer there. My coworker and I started talking during lunch breaks. At first, it was just venting. She listened. She laughed at my dumb complaints. I didn't feel like the bad guy all the time. That's how it started. I crossed a line and then I kept crossing it. When my wife found out, I didn't deny it. I told her everything. I think I expected screaming. She didn't scream. She just told me to get out. That quiet was worse, so I went to stay with the coworker. I told myself it was temporary. Then she told me she was pregnant. I felt sick when she said it, not because I didn't want kids. I already have one. It was the reality of what I'd done. I'd blown up my son's home. A few days after my wife found out I was staying there, she called me and said maybe we could try again. She said we owed it to our son. I think she also didn't want me building a new family somewhere else. She sounded calmer than I expected, almost soft. Around that same time, my coworker told me she wanted to actually try with me, not just because of the baby. She said she had feelings before any of this happened. So suddenly I had both of them saying they wanted me. I asked people for advice. Most of them said I should go back to my wife and try to fix what I broke. That's what a decent person would do. So I went back. The first day felt almost normal. My wife was affectionate in a way she hasn't been in a long time. She kept touching my arm when she walked by. She made my favorite dinner. I could tell she was trying. I tried too. I told myself this was what I wanted all along, my family back together. But by the second day, it shifted. She started asking questions again, details. How many times, where, if I loved her, if I loved the coworker. I answered, but every answer made her face close off more. I don't blame her for that either. I did that to her. By the third day, the house felt tense again, not like before the affair. Worse, there was this constant edge, like I was being measured. She cried at night. During the day, she'd suddenly get quiet if her phone buzzed, like she expected it to be someone telling her I was with the other woman again. I felt like no matter what I said, it wouldn't fix it. I had already changed the structure of our marriage. There was a third person in it now, whether we liked it or not. I kept thinking about the baby that's coming. That child exists. That doesn't go away if I pretend hard enough. On the fourth day, I texted my coworker and asked if she was still serious about trying with me. I didn't overthink it. I just sent it. She said yes. She said she didn't want to share me emotionally with someone who would always resent her child. That hit me, because even if my wife and I forced this to work, she would have to be involved in raising a child that came from me betraying her. School events, schedules, financial support. That child would always be there. I don't see how she wouldn't resent that. I don't see how I wouldn't feel constantly guilty in my own house. So I told my wife I'm leaving, for good this time. She didn't yell. She just kept saying I was making a mistake, that she should be the one who gets a full family, not the other woman, that I'm choosing the easy way out. Maybe I am, I don't know anymore. She's been calling and texting nonstop, saying I'm throwing away our son's stability, saying I'll regret building something on top of betrayal. I understand why she feels that way, but I also think staying would just drag out the damage. I would spend years trying to make up for something that can't be undone. She would spend years wondering if I would do it again. At least with my coworker, we're starting from the truth of what happened. There's no pretending. There's already a child on the way. I can build something there without the affair hanging over every conversation because it won't be an affair anymore. It will just be our life. I know people will say I'm running. Maybe that's fair. But I don't see a version where my wife and I ever feel normal again. Even if we smile in pictures, this will always sit underneath. My son will still have me. I'll make sure of that. We can work out custody. I'll support him financially. I'm not disappearing. I just don't believe there's a future where my wife can look at me without seeing what I did. And I don't think I can live in a house where every day feels like I'm waiting to be forgiven for something that won't ever fully go away. Follow-up. I told my wife we need to file for divorce immediately. I didn't say it aggressively. I actually tried to sound calm about it. I said dragging it out was only going to make things worse for everyone, especially our son. What I meant was I can't keep living in this in-between space where she's crying one day and asking for family counseling the next. She didn't agree. She said I'm rushing because I want to make this feel legitimate with the other woman before the baby comes. I told her that's not what this is. I said I'm trying to create stability. She looked at me like I was speaking a different language. Around the same time, I asked her if we could not tell people about the pregnancy yet. I said it would be better for our son if extended family didn't know details. I didn't want him hearing whispers at birthdays about his new sibling. I didn't say that I also don't want to sit across from my parents while they look at me like I detonated my own life. She got really quiet when I asked. I thought maybe she understood. She told my parents anyway. My mom called me before I even had a chance to talk to them myself. She just kept asking why I would do this to my son. Not to my wife, to my son. That part stuck. My dad was colder. He said if I'm going to make adult decisions, I need to deal with adult consequences. I hung up feeling like I was 15 again. I've fully moved into my girlfriend's apartment now. All my clothes, my desk, everything. It doesn't feel temporary anymore. She cleared out space in the closet and bought shelves for the baby already. She talks about nursery paint colors like this is some fresh start. I'm trying to match that energy, but I don't feel the excitement the way she does. I feel pressure. I don't say that out loud. Work has got weird. HR called me in because someone reported that we're living together. Technically, we're not breaking policy, but we can't be on the same project team anymore. That means one of us has to transfer departments. She cried in the parking lot after that meeting. She thinks it's her fault my career is taking a hit. I told her it's not, but I also know my manager looks at me differently now. Mediation for custody started last week. My wife is asking for primary custody with me getting weekends and one weekday. She brought up instability. She mentioned I moved directly into the other woman's apartment. Hearing it framed like that in a formal setting made me sound reckless. I pushed for 50-50. I said I'm not an absent father, which I'm not. I've never missed a doctor appointment. I've always worked to provide, but I could tell the mediator was noting everything. The worst part has been exchanges with my son. He's been clingier with his mom. At drop-offs, he sometimes buries his face into her shoulder and won't look at me. Last time he cried when she walked away. I picked him up anyway and told him he'd have fun at Dad's place. He calmed down eventually, but I could feel her watching me like this is proof I broke something permanent. Money is tighter than I expected. 2 households, lawyer fees, and baby expenses are coming. I suggested to my wife that maybe we scale back some extracurricular stuff next year to balance things fairly. She said I don't get to talk about fair after what I did. That turned into a longer argument about support calculations. I told her I'm not trying to avoid responsibility. I'm trying to be realistic. It didn't land. A mutual friend mentioned casually that she went out for drinks with someone last weekend. I don't even know if it was a date, but it bothered me. Not because I want her back. I don't. It just felt fast, or maybe it's not fast. Maybe I don't get to have opinions on that anymore. I almost texted her about it. I didn't. She still calls sometimes late at night. Not begging like before, more angry now, saying I'm building a new family while she's left to clean up the emotional fallout. I told her again that staying would have been worse, that we would have lived in constant resentment. She said I already decided that for her without giving her time to choose. The pregnancy is further along now. There are doctor appointments, budgeting spreadsheets, HR paperwork, and mediation schedules. None of it feels peaceful. I thought once I made a clear decision, everything would settle. Instead, it's just a different kind of tension. I keep telling myself this is the responsible path. Finish the divorce, formalize custody, prepare for the new baby, stop hovering between 2 lives. That's what adults do. But every time my son hesitates at the door or my mom pauses before saying goodbye on the phone, I feel this split second of doubt. Then I push it down because second guessing doesn't fix anything. I made this choice, so I'm trying to move forward like it was the only logical one. It just doesn't feel as stable as I thought it would. Follow-up. Things have not calmed down. Anything, it feels like every time I try to get ahead of something, it turns into another problem. A few weeks ago, I suggested that my wife and I tell our families about the pregnancy together. I told her it would look more mature if we handled it as co-parents instead of letting rumors spread. I said it would protect our son from hearing distorted versions later. What I really didn't want was her telling the story in a way that made me look like I just ran off and replaced her. She refused. She said she's not helping me manage optics. A few days later, she told her side to extended family anyway. Not just that there's a baby coming, but also that I moved in immediately and pushed for divorce fast. My aunt called me asking if I had been unhappy for years. That's not even true. It makes it sound calculated. Work got worse too. HR decided one of us had to transfer departments to avoid conflict issues. I assumed it would be her. My role pays more and has longer-term growth. She agreed, but she cried about it later and said she feels like she's losing stability right before having a baby. I told her we're thinking long-term, that this makes sense financially. She said it's always about what makes sense for me. Money is tighter than I expected. Between mediation, lawyers, deposits, and preparing for a newborn, it adds up fast. I told my wife that since I'm pushing for 50-50 custody, child support should reflect that now instead of waiting months for final orders. She said I don't get to negotiate like we're splitting a cable bill. That I created this situation and now I'm trying to discount it. I'm not trying to get out of responsibility. I just don't see why I should be paying as if I only see my son 4 days a month. She's documenting everything now. Every request goes through email. It feels cold. I found out she's seeing someone more seriously, not just drinks. Apparently he's been around a few times when I pick up our son. I didn't like that at all. I told her I need to know who is around my kid. She said I lost the right to control her personal life. I said this isn't about control, it's about safety. She asked if I was worried about safety or territory. That annoyed me more than it should have. I told her I'd bring it up in mediation if I felt boundaries weren't clear. She said, go ahead. Meanwhile, things with my girlfriend aren't as easy as I imagined. She asked me last week if I ever cheated before her. I said no. She asked how she's supposed to believe I won't do to her what I did to my wife once life gets stressful again. I told her our situation is different because we're building this honestly. She said it didn't start honestly. She's been asking for more reassurance lately. Wants to know where I am, who I'm texting. I understand why, but sometimes it feels like I traded one kind of tension for another. We also had to move to a smaller place. Legal fees and deposits ate into what I thought we'd have. She had pictured setting up a nursery in a bigger space. Now it's a corner of the bedroom. She tries to stay positive, but I can see disappointment. I've started staying later at work again because it feels simpler there. I know how that sounds. A few weeks ago I proposed to her. I thought making it official before the baby comes would show commitment. I wanted something solid. She said yes, but she asked if I'm doing it because I love her or because I want to prove everyone wrong. I told her both can be true. She didn't laugh. My wife found out about the engagement through social media. After that, she stopped any informal coordination. Everything goes through attorneys now. No more flexibility on pickup times. No more casual updates about preschool stuff. It's all structured and stiff. My parents have been helping her more. Babysitting, going to school events. When I confronted them, my mom said they're supporting their grandson, not choosing sides, but it feels like choosing. They used to drop by my place. They haven't since the engagement. I keep trying to tell myself this is just the messy middle part before things stabilize. Divorce takes time. Blended families take adjustment. Finances settle eventually. But the more I push to formalize everything, announcements, transfers, custody percentages, engagement, the more resistance I get from every direction. My wife digs in. My girlfriend questions me. My parents pull back. I don't regret leaving. I still believe staying would have meant years of resentment. I don't see a world where my marriage could have gone back to normal. I just didn't expect that choosing a direction wouldn't automatically make things feel steady. Now it feels like I'm constantly defending every decision, even the ones I thought were responsible. And I'm starting to realize that making something official doesn't stop it from being complicated. Follow-up. I keep telling people I'm trying to create stability, but the more I try to lock things down legally, the more unstable everything feels. I pushed for a clause in the custody agreement about no new partners being around our son for at least 6 months. I framed it as giving him time to adjust. I said he's already dealing with one huge change. He doesn't need strangers rotating in and out of his life. The mediator looked at me and then at my fiance's pregnant stomach. She didn't say anything for a second. Then she asked how I define new partner. I said that's different. We're engaged. There's a baby coming. This is permanent. My wife didn't even argue much. She just said exactly. That word sat there. I tried to clarify that I meant casual partners and instability, not serious relationships, but it sounded thin even to me. Around that same time, things shifted at work. HR finalized the transfers. My fiancé moved departments. I stayed. Technically, it was the right financial move. My position has better upward mobility, but since everything blew up, I haven't been treated the same. I didn't get invited to a client dinner last week that I normally would have. A project lead I expected went to someone else. No one said it was because of my personal life. No one had to. At home, the mood isn't light anymore. She's further along now, more uncomfortable. We argue about small things, dishes, money, tone of voice. One night during an argument about the custody clause, she said, "How do I know you won't leave me when this gets hard too?" I snapped and said I didn't leave because things got hard. I left because it was already broken. She asked who decided that. It escalated from there. In the middle of it, she said something that's been stuck in my head ever since. She said, "Sometimes I wonder if you'd be this committed if I weren't pregnant." I said sometimes I wonder if the baby is really mine. I know it was a cowardly thing to say, but I was angry. She hesitated and then said maybe we should get a paternity test just in case, before things go any further. She said it calmly. I told her that wasn't necessary, but she persisted. I said if she thinks there's even a possibility it's not mine. She said she just wants to clear everything before planning any future. I told her I never questioned the baby, but now that she said it out loud, I want the paternity test done. I hate that my mind even went there. The timeline matches. I know it does. Still, once doubt is introduced, it just sits there. I also pushed again to finalize the divorce before the baby is born. I said it's cleaner legally and emotionally. I don't want my child born while I'm still technically married to someone else. My wife refused to speed anything up. She said she won't make decisions on my timeline anymore. I accused her of dragging it out to punish me. She said she's moving at a normal pace, and I'm the one who keeps demanding everything be wrapped up immediately. My parents went to my wife's place. They've been helping her more lately, doing school pickups, bringing dinner over, just being around. I confronted them about it. I told them it feels like they're choosing sides. My dad told me this isn't about sides, it's about patterns. He said when things got difficult after my son was born, I checked out emotionally. Then I found comfort somewhere easier. Now that things with my fiancé are getting complicated, he sees the same withdrawal starting. I told him that's unfair. This situation isn't the same. He said the details aren't the point. Lately I've been questioning things I wasn't questioning before. Not loudly, just in my head. When she talks about wedding dates, I feel pressure instead of excitement. When she asks if I'll be at every prenatal class, I feel cornered by the assumption. I proposed because I thought making it official would solidify us. Now it feels like another commitment stacked on top of commitments I'm still trying to untangle. We had another argument about money 2 nights ago. She wants to start planning maternity leave expenses more aggressively. I said we need to see how the custody arrangement lands first. She said everything in our life feels like it's waiting on my divorce to settle, and she's tired of being the second timeline. That hit hard. At mediation this week, my wife agreed to revisit the partner clause, but only if it applies equally, which means technically my fiancé wouldn't be around our son overnight for a period of time. I said that doesn't make sense given she lives with me. The mediator said sometimes consequences don't align neatly. Driving home after that, I had this brief thought I didn't want to have. What if I rushed into building something new because I couldn't tolerate sitting alone with what I'd broken? I don't regret leaving my marriage. I still believe it was past the point of repair. But I'm starting to question whether I actually chose this new life because it's right, or because it was there and immediate and felt like relief. My fiancé asked me yesterday if I'm happy. I said yes automatically. She watched my face a second longer than usual. I don't know if I'm unhappy. I just know everything feels heavier than I thought it would. The job tension, the legal fights, the doubt she introduced about paternity. My parents are looking at me like they're waiting for me to repeat something. Part of me wonders if I even know how to stay when things stop feeling easy. I haven't said any of that out loud. I keep pushing forward like this is the only logical path. But for the first time since I left, I'm not completely sure I want to stay where I've landed. Follow-up. The baby is mine. We did the test. I didn't say much while we were waiting for the results, but I was tense. When it came back confirming I was the father, she cried. Not happy crying, just exhausted. I felt relief for about 5 minutes. Then the weight of it settled in properly. It didn't fix anything between us. We kept fighting after that, about the custody clause, about money, about whether I proposed because I meant it or because I wanted something solid to point to. She told me she doesn't trust that I stay when things get hard. I kept insisting this was different, but I couldn't convincingly explain why. A few weeks ago, she said she didn't want to do this anymore. She just said she doesn't want to build a marriage on top of resentment and suspicion. She said every time I talk about stability, it sounds like I'm trying to manage outcomes instead of actually showing up. I told her she was overthinking everything. She said maybe she finally started thinking clearly, so that's it. The engagement is over. We're still going to co-parent. The baby is due soon. I've been helping set up what she needs at her place, but I don't live there anymore. The divorce with my wife is finalized now too. The custody schedule is set. I have 50-50 with my son. I'm also going to be paying child support for the new baby. 2 separate households, 2 payment structures. When the numbers were laid out formally, it hit me harder than any argument did. I'm not broke, but it's tight. I had to move into a smaller apartment alone. No extra room, no nursery at my place yet, just a crib in the corner for when the baby stays over eventually. I've had more quiet lately than I've had in a long time. No late-night fights, no tension in the kitchen, just space, and I keep replaying everything. My marriage wasn't perfect. It was strained. We were tired. Intimacy dropped. Communication got defensive. But it wasn't beyond repair the way I convinced myself it was. It was hard. That's not the same thing. I thought I was choosing honesty over living in resentment. I thought I was choosing a future that made sense instead of dragging out something broken. But looking back, I didn't try that hard to fix it before I stepped outside of it. Now I have 2 kids in 2 homes. A co-parenting relationship with my ex-wife that is polite but distant. A co-parenting relationship with my ex-fiancé that is civil but cautious. And no actual partner. I wanted a stable family. Instead, I fractured one and failed to build the other. I don't regret my kids, not for a second. But I do regret how I handled everything. I kept thinking if I just made decisive moves, things would settle. That clarity would fix chaos. It didn't. I'm sitting in an apartment I can afford because I have to, not because I chose it. And I can't shake the feeling that I took something imperfect but good and dismantled it with my own hands because I didn't want to sit in discomfort long enough to repair it.